I am a 31-year-old female married to 35-year-old James. We have a young son growing up in our family. James has 2 other children from a previous marriage, Grace, a teenage girl, and Luke, a teenage boy. Their mother, 36-year-old Sharon, and James divorced 12 years ago. Since then, Sharon has gone through several relationships and has been the mother of 4 more teenage children. She is currently married and raising 3 stepchildren who are younger than teenagers. James has always been at Sharon's side, offering help when needed. This has made the children realize that he is doing everything he can for their good and their mother's good. He now suggests that I take on more responsibilities and take care of all of Sharon's children. Working from home, I run my own online business and combine it with other aspects of life. After learning that Sharon was having difficulty finding reliable childcare and her husband was unable to help, Grace reached out to her father to ask for help, expressing concern for her mother. I expressed my concerns to James, indicating that the proposed responsibilities seemed overly burdensome. He assured me that he would provide support and take care of the financial aspects so that I would not have to worry. However, I emphasized that the duties seemed overly burdensome and overwhelming to me. This caused him frustration, to which I replied that I did not appreciate the pressure I was under. Sharon subsequently contacted me, expressing her desire to start taking the children to me after Christmas. My opposition surprised her, as James had convinced her otherwise. She reasoned that my help would be mutually beneficial to everyone, including Grace and Luke, as well as my son, their half-brother. I pointed out to James that it was unacceptable to make promises on my behalf without consent. His surprise at my reaction emphasized his confidence in my consent, even though I had never objected to his help. At his request, I explained that if he insisted on helping, he could pay for childcare, but that I personally would not be able to take on the task. I also suggested that we should go to couples counseling, recognizing that while it may seem insignificant, it was important to discuss these issues openly. My reluctance to take on these responsibilities is also based in part on Grace and Luke's relationship to my son. They have never shown interest in him, unlike their relationships with their other half-siblings. This distance extends not only to my son, but also to me and their mother's husband. I feel that my disagreement is driven by concerns about the future relationships between all the children, especially in the context of how Grace and Luke treat their other siblings compared to my son. Sharon accused me of being reckless and failing to think in the best interests of the adopted children. James has responded by suggesting we seek compromise, but I feel that calling me an idiot is not conducive to productive dialogue. I'm trying to do the math. She has 6 biological children. 2 of them are from your husband, the other 4 are from different men. In addition, there are 3 stepchildren in their family. Thus, he wants you to watch the additional 7 children during the day. This is in addition to your own children, Grace and Luke, totaling 10 children. I would recommend refusing, as this could lead to absolute chaos. So, you labor while refusing to call yourself a homemaker. You work from home with a flexible schedule and regularly remind your husband that yes, you will be taking care of 10 children. Frankly, this is an unreasonable request, even in an emergency for one day or evening, and only if you are truly ready for it. Normal daycare doesn't even allow that many children with one adult. It is very disturbing that your husband is going to such lengths to help his ex. I realize that he is probably doing this for the sake of his children, but this is really over the top. You are not insane. His insistence represents a serious problem in your marriage. Taking care of 10 children, including your own, while working from home is an impossible task. Be sure to let them both know that if they leave the children unattended, you will call the police. Ask for support as James is absent. The question is not whether you could watch the child for a few hours. The question is whether you could organize and run a full daycare for free. And of course, imagine what the food cost would be. I, being a man, will frankly give my opinion. Your husband has agreed to the proposal, while realizing that the main and most time-consuming work of childcare will not rest on his shoulders. In addition to the financial investment, he plans to limit his involvement in the children's lives to a minimum. I'm sure you can rest easy about your husband's relationship with another woman, because in my opinion, it is the lack of other explanations that makes this plan so unusual. Next story. My cousin is married to her chosen one. She has always stood out for her views. She criticized those who she believed contributed to the world's problems, including climate change, with anti-capitalist beliefs. Despite my love for her, Her beliefs were sometimes irritating. Her personality was permeated with this idea to the point that she had an aversion to affluent people. When she met her future husband, she was convinced that his interest in her was not due to his habit of getting what he wanted, due to his upbringing and affluence. Even kind gestures on her husband's part were received with irritation. After the wedding, she claimed that she could dispose of his fortune as she saw fit. They moved to Australia, where they were to live for at least 3 years. However, the news of her pregnancy was a great hardship for her. The lack of closeness with her family and the rapid changes in her life aggravated her condition. Her husband, showing concern, made the decision to return home the day after learning the news. He was due to return to Australia after the holidays to take care of some business, suggesting the possibility of a temporary separation. My cousin told me that he planned to keep in touch despite the distance. I expressed to her that her decision to marry a man so far from her ideals seemed hypocritical. This led to tears, which was uncharacteristic of her. Her reaction may have been due to hormonal changes during pregnancy. I realized my mistake, expressing regret for the emotion caused. You were wrong in your assumption. The emotional state was not caused by hormonal changes during pregnancy. Your reaction was inordinately harsh. Life experience teaches us that the word never should not be used, because circumstances can change in the most unexpected ways. In the process of growing up, a person may change his or her beliefs and viewpoints, which is a natural process. The feedback about the environmental impact was fair because it was based on facts. If a person uses public transportation instead of a private jet, their contribution to pollution is lower, although still significant. Nevertheless, everyone goes through difficult moments that may be the subject of jokes later, but not in times of crisis. Even long-distance travel by commercial flights has a significant impact on the environment due to high carbon emissions. This impact is less than from flying on a private jet, but still large compared to everyday consumption. It seems that the change in behavior is not due to sincere beliefs, but to circumstances pushing one to revise one's own views. Presenting grievances in response to criticism may seem fair, but one should not be oblivious to the other person's feelings. Openly expressed disagreement with previous beliefs, especially in light of the new social and financial situation, may look like hypocrisy. But we should not forget that everyone has the right to change their views and behavior in accordance with changing life circumstances. Now I want to tell a different story. My spouse and I are both 48 years old. We have a son, John, who is 26. He recently informed us of his intention to propose to his sweetheart, Cece. We had met Cece a few times before, and at first glance, she seemed like a nice girl. However, there were some concerns regarding her family. Along with my wife, we own real estate that we rent out. John lives in one of our homes. It is arranged this way because he is continuing his graduate studies. We have always been unanimous in our desire to provide rent-free housing for our children, especially while they are in school, to spare them the hassle. Our concerns about the Cece family did not arise from nothing. Several meetings with them confirmed our concerns. They took an inordinate interest in our family, my spouse, and our finances. From what I was able to learn from the other children and John himself, Cece's mother is approaching retirement age with no savings or plan for the future. She has repeatedly expressed a desire to move to live with us, reasoning that this is her future son-in-law's home. It seems that Cece's mother sees John, who is about to graduate from medical school, as her security for his old age. As the eldest son, I made a will that John will receive a substantial amount of money and property, including the house claimed by Cece's mother. I'm not sure if she knows the contents of the will, but it could explain her attempts to move. My fears are heightened by the fact that this family could somehow claim a portion of our estate after my passing. John is a kind-hearted man who sees only good in people. I fear that his future mother-in-law may take advantage of this. When John informed me of his decision to marry Cece, I suggested that he enter into a prenuptial agreement to protect his inheritance. Although prenuptial agreements are considered desirable, he flatly refused the idea. I approached my son with a warning that if he married Cece without a prenuptial agreement, he would be excluded from the will and the house would pass to his siblings. Despite this, my son remained undeterred. In light of this, I began to contemplate retitling the house in the name of another of our children. My distrust of the Cece family and their motives toward my son is based on good reason. I do not seek to dictate to my adult son who he should or should not be with. However, it is important to me to secure an inheritance for my children. Since my statement, my son has stopped communicating with me. I am plagued with doubts as to whether my action was too harsh. The main concern concerns the house. However, my son is still entitled to a substantial amount of money from the will. He will get his share, but not the house. During the meeting with Cease's mother, she made repeated comments about how her future son-in-law would take care of her pension. Her constant questions about the possibility of moving into the house reached the point of unacceptability. When trusting your inner voice, it's worth considering the example of a future mother-in-law who expresses a desire to live in your property as a tenant. This begs the question, after all, none of us are thoughtless. It is possible to set up a trust, entrusting its administration to a trusted person, which will allow you to retain control of the situation even after you pass away. Including terms in a will or entering into a prenuptial agreement can also be a solution. My father went this route by conditioning inheritance by signing a prenuptial agreement. It appears that Cease's family will move in with John and his spouse after their marriage. If John and Cease are accepting of this development, there will be no problem. But if John is opposed and feels compelled to take this step, despite the lack of objection from the rest of the family, the situation becomes more complicated. All indications are that John has no conflict with his relatives. However, attempts to manipulate or apply pressure, for example, by threatening exclusion from the will for failure to comply with certain conditions, appear manipulative. John has no unquestionable right to inherit, but such methods of influence to influence his decisions seem questionable. Suppose that it is the parent who takes over paying the real estate bills, thus helping his children with finances during their education. In that case, it would be reasonable to assume that housing costs are also covered. If I were in this situation, I would not want to take on the utility bills that are part of someone else's provision. Following your intuition, it is important to question why someone should have the right to take the results of your labor. Perhaps you want to leave your child a certain amount of money without providing for significant payments to your spouse's relatives. It will be curious to see how things develop if friends and their families find out that your child will not receive a significant inheritance or contribute to their financial security for their old age. My next story. I am currently 30 years old and am a woman taking on the role of a guardian. My wards are my niece Jade, who is a student at a grammar school, and my nephew Mark, who is still attending preschool. These children are orphans. Their parents, my brother and his wife, passed away 8 months ago. Also in my life is my cousin Rita. This 33-year-old woman is preparing to marry her partner Andy. Andy chooses not to adhere to traditional gender roles and identifies as non-binary at the age of 29. Rita has expressed her desire for Jade and Mark to be part of their wedding ceremony. Rita and Andy's wedding will feature a diversity of gender identities. Andy's best friend since childhood, who is a woman, will fulfill the role of best lady. Among the bridesmaids will be a transgender woman and a non-binary person who has chosen to wear a tuxedo for the celebration. Andy and Rita approached me to ask if Jade and Mark could take on special roles in their wedding ceremony. They suggested that Mark be the flower boy and Jade be the ring bearer. Instead of traditional roles, these children would fulfill their roles while maintaining their individuality. Specifically, Jade would wear small folds of hair, embodying her unique style. I supported this proposal, as I believe that a wedding should fulfill the wishes of the newlyweds. Everyone embraced the idea with joy. Rita captured the moment by photographing Jade and Mark and shared the shot on social media, calling them my flower boy and ring bearer girl. After coming home with the kids, I got a call from Zoe. This is her sister-in-law's mom and Jade and Mark's grandmother. Zoe and Rita knew each other on Facebook through the collaboration of their places of employment. Zoe had strong opinions about the children's involvement in the wedding, arguing that they shouldn't take on the roles offered. She would prefer them to be mere guests. Zoe felt that ignoring traditional gender roles would lead to negative consequences for society in the future. She also stated that Rita and I had no right to involve her grandchildren in gender experimentation, and that Jade and Mark deserved to be protected from such involvement. Personally, I found these comments by Zoe to be unfounded and think she should take a calmer view of the situation. Zoe is being ridiculous in this situation. What little boy would turn down the opportunity to walk between rows, leaving a trail of chaos behind him, throwing objects in all directions? At 4 years old, my son loved the idea of participating in a wedding ceremony. He dreamed of either carrying the ring cushion or scattering flower petals in front of the bride and groom. I'm sure many would agree that children are especially drawn to flowers before the age of 5. This interest in floral beauty can lay the foundation for future hobbies. However, assumptions about the impact of these hobbies on a child's personal life in the future are misplaced. Our society has long ago come to realize that choice of occupation does not and should not define or limit personal freedom or identity. Anyone can wear rings or flower petals, regardless of gender. A story that really surprised me. My agreement with my children was simple. I pledged to cover almost all of the cost of their college education, provided that they were high achievers, successfully completed their studies, and found employment on campus. I was firm in my decision not to support financially if they withdrew from college, even though I had the means. My son handled these conditions perfectly, as did my second child in seniority, and my third was not far behind either. However, when faced with challenges, my daughter was unable to meet the criteria, so I exempted her from having to work on campus so that she could focus on her studies. Unfortunately, she was not able to achieve the desired results, eventually admitting to skipping classes and not completing academic assignments. Various factors affected her academic performance, but the plan was for her to spend the next semester living more peacefully at home. Despite the agreement, today my daughter informed me of her decision to enroll in another college and expressed her desire to transfer there. This new college is a branch of a public institution and is known for its community involvement. It is located so far away that living at home becomes impossible, which in turn doubles the cost. In addition, the institution she had previously attended offered her a scholarship, making it more financially advantageous to study there. I expressed my position that it would be an unnecessary waste of resources to fund her education at a new place. My daughter could transfer to the college of her choice, but she would have to assume responsibility for covering the costs, including possible loan processing, since my financial support would then end. This decision has sparked a heated argument over control of her life and accusations of me being overly strict. Her siblings also sided with her, criticizing me for withholding financial resources, even though I did things differently with them. They were responsible, unlike her. Nevertheless, this year has shown that she is capable of making decisions, even if they cause discussion within the family circle. Your confusion about why you think the current educational system will continue to support her with scholarships is understandable. You would not dismiss the idea, but you emphasize that you need to wait until she has proven her ability to be a successful student before considering other institutions. You emphasize that you do not seek to control her life by giving her a choice between studying nearby with paid tuition or choosing another college, the costs of which she will bear on her own. Your position seems perfectly logical to you, given that she has already had a history of unsuccessful schooling. It makes no sense to you to spend the extra money to educate her at an institution known for its penchant for entertainment without the opportunity to help her take responsibility for her actions. You wonder if your assumption that she would choose partying over classes, coming home to a difficult situation, is unfair. However, you tend to think that your daughter has not yet shown herself to be a mature and responsible person.